I am standing there in the middle of O'Hare International Airport. My worn-out rolling suitcase is in my hands, and the tickets to Miami that I bought myself are in my blouse pocket. For months, I saved every dollar from my pension for this family trip. It was $1,500 that I scraped together by cutting back on groceries, on clothes, on my medicine. I just want to see my daughter Emily happy, to see my little granddaughter Sarah playing in the sand, to feel like I'm still part of this family. But what happens that day breaks me in a way I never imagined someone could be broken. Emily looks elegant as always with her expensive suit and that designer bag hanging from her shoulder. Michael, my son-in-law, is checking his phone with that look of someone who is always too busy for the world. And Sarah, my 16-year-old granddaughter, is glued to her phone taking photos for social media. When I walk up to them in the check-in line dragging my little old suitcase, Emily looks at me with that expression I know so well. It is contempt mixed with irritation. She sighs deeply in that dramatic way she always does when she's about to say something cruel, and then the words come out of her mouth like a lightning bolt that hits me head-on. In front of dozens of people, she tells me that I am just in the way, that old people shouldn't travel, that I am going to ruin their vacation with my limitations and complaints. She says I am too slow, that I am going to embarrass them, that they can't enjoy anything with me around. The people around us stop to watch. I see pity in the eyes of some, discomfort in others. Sarah lowers her head, but she says nothing in my defense. Michael just nods as if my daughter is stating the most obvious thing in the world. Something inside me breaks in that moment. It isn't anger, it isn't sadness, it is a cold, sharp clarity like ice. I look at the tickets in my hand. These tickets I bought with the money I saved for months, denying myself even the smallest pleasures to give them this gift. Then very slowly in front of everyone, I tear all 4 tickets in half. The sound of the paper tearing echoes in that busy terminal. Emily turns white. Michael takes a step forward, but I raise my hand and he stops. I take my suitcase, turn my back on them, and start walking toward the exit. I hear Emily scream my name. I hear the panic in her voice when she realizes the tickets are in my name, and that without those papers they aren't getting on that plane. But I don't stop. I don't look back. And as I walk out of that airport, a single certainty takes hold of me with a strength I have never felt before. But what they don't know is that everything is about to change. My name is Hope Miller. I am 68 years old, and for most of my life, I have been the woman everyone expected me to be. The perfect wife who took care of her husband David for 40 years until diabetes took him. The selfless mother who sacrificed her own dreams so her daughter could study business at a private university. The convenient grandmother who was always available when they needed someone to watch Sarah or clean the house or cook for important guests. But that day at O'Hare, something changes forever. Maybe it is the exhaustion of pretending their cruel words didn't hurt me. Maybe it is the accumulated anger from years of being treated like an old piece of furniture tolerated out of pity. Or maybe it was simply that my heart could not carry any more humiliation without breaking completely. Emily has always been ambitious. Since she was a child, she wanted the best things, the best clothes, the best toys, the best education. And I, like any mother who loves her daughter, worked 3 jobs to give her everything she asked for. I cleaned offices in the early morning. I sold food at the market during the day. I sewed clothes at night. My hands became rough. My back bent. My youth faded in those years of constant effort. But seeing Emily graduate from college was the greatest reward of my life. When she married Michael, a lawyer from a wealthy family, I thought my sacrifices had been worth it. My daughter had gotten the life I never could. A big house in Lincoln Park, a successful husband, the ability to be a full-time mother. I felt proud to have been part of that achievement. I sold the few pieces of jewelry I had, including my wedding ring, which was the most valuable thing I owned, to give them the down payment for their house. $25,000 that represented my entire life savings. The first few years after her marriage were good. Emily visited me often. She would bring Sarah to spend weekends with me. She included me in family celebrations. I felt needed, valued, an important part of their lives. But things began to change gradually, so slowly that at first I didn't notice. First, the visits became less frequent. "I'm so busy with the baby, Mom," Emily would tell me when Sarah was little. Then the calls became shorter, colder. "I don't have time to chat, Mom. I have a million things to do." Then came the celebrations where I became the one in charge of the kitchen, not the guest of honor. "Mom, you cook so well. Why don't you make the turkey for Christmas dinner?" I thought Emily would grow closer to me. I thought she would understand that I was alone now that I needed her company, her affection. But it was the exact opposite. My widowhood seemed to inconvenience her, as if my sadness was an additional burden she didn't want to carry. The visits became even rarer, and when she did come, it was always in a hurry, always with her phone in her hand, always reminding me she had more important things to do. Sarah, my granddaughter, who had been so affectionate when she was little, also began to change. She became a teenager who was embarrassed by her old-fashioned grandmother. When she came to visit, she stayed locked in her room with her phone. She barely spoke to me. If I asked about school or her friends, she answered in monosyllables, as if talking to me was torture. Michael had always been distant, but as the years passed, his attitude became openly dismissive. He treated me like a foolish old woman who didn't understand the modern world. When I gave my opinion on something, he would cut me off with sarcastic comments about the good old days or how things had changed and I hadn't noticed. Emily never defended him, but she never defended me either. She just stayed silent, looking at her phone as if her husband insulting her mother was just a normal thing to be tolerated. The last 2 years were especially hard. I realized that I was only useful for specific things. Watching Sarah when they traveled, cleaning their house when they had important guests, cooking for their social gatherings, it was like I was a free housekeeper who also had an obligation to be grateful just to be included in their lives. Every time they needed something, the call would come. "Mom, can you come watch Sarah this weekend? Mom, can you make your famous chili for the dinner party on Saturday? Mom, can you clean the house because Michael's parents are coming over?" And I always said yes. I always dropped my own plans, my own needs to please my daughter, because deep down I was afraid that if I wasn't useful, if I didn't serve a purpose, then I would have no place in their lives. Afraid of being left completely alone in the world, afraid of dying without anyone even noticing. But the more useful I tried to be, the less they valued me. The more I tried to please them, the more they took me for granted. My unconditional love had become a license for them to mistreat me without consequences. And I, without realizing it, had taught my own family that they could walk all over me, because I would always be there enduring it, forgiving, justifying their cruelty with my desperate need to belong. The trip to Miami had been my idea. It had been a difficult few months for me, feeling more and more invisible in my own family. I thought a vacation together would help us reconnect, to remember we were family, that we loved each other. I spent 6 months of my savings to buy those tickets, filled with the dream of seeing Emily relaxed on the beach, of playing with Sarah in the sand, of feeling that I still had a place in their hearts. When I proposed the trip, Emily made a strange face, as if the idea made her uncomfortable. "Are you sure, Mom, Miami is very tiring? So much heat, so much walking." But I insisted, promising I wouldn't be a burden, that I just wanted to spend time with them. They finally accepted. But now I realize they only did it because the tickets were already paid for, and they didn't want to miss a free vacation. During the weeks leading up to the trip, I noticed a certain tension in Emily when we talked about the plans. Michael made sarcastic comments about traveling with mothers-in-law, which Emily never answered, but she never disapproved of them either. Sarah complained that it would be boring to have to do things her grandmother could do. But I held on to my fantasy, thinking that once we were on the beach, everything would be different. The night before the trip, I couldn't sleep from excitement. I had packed my suitcase so carefully, packing my best summer dresses, the new hat I had bought especially for the occasion, the comfortable sandals for walking in the sand. I had saved extra money to treat them to nice dinners, to buy Sarah a special souvenir, to feel that I could also contribute to making the vacation perfect. We arrived at the airport early that morning. Emily and Michael seemed tense, talking quietly between themselves, while I took charge of checking that all the documents were in order. Sarah was more interested in taking selfies at the airport than in talking to me. But I kept smiling, kept pretending I didn't notice their coldness. I kept clinging to the hope that everything would get better once we were in Miami. And then the moment came that changed everything forever. We were in the check-in line when Emily got a call. It was her friend Jessica, who was apparently having problems with her husband and urgently needed to get out of town. Emily talked to her for several minutes, and I could hear parts of the conversation. Jessica was crying, saying she needed to get away from it all, that she had nowhere to go. When Emily hung up, she looked at me with that expression I now recognize as the prelude to something terrible. "Mom, we have a problem," she said. "Jessica needs to get out of town urgently. Her husband is treating her terribly, and she needs a place to stay for a few days." "She can stay at my place," I said immediately. "You have a key. She can use my room. It's no problem." Emily shook her head. "No, Mom. What she needs is to get completely out of the city, to get away from everything. And I was thinking that maybe we could give her our spot on the trip." I didn't understand at first. "Our spot, whose?" "Well, your spot, Mom. Jessica could come with us instead of you. It's only 3 days and you can stay home and rest. At your age, the trip is going to tire you out a lot anyway." The world stopped in that moment. People kept moving around us. The airport announcements kept playing. Life continued as normal for everyone except me. Because in that moment, I realized that to my own daughter, my presence on the family trip was so irrelevant that I could be replaced by anyone else without it even mattering. "But Emily," I mumbled, "it's our family trip. It's my gift to you. I've been getting ready for weeks." "Mom, don't be selfish," she said, using that voice she uses when she's scolding me like a child. "Jessica is going through a real crisis. We can travel together any time. This is more important." "Selfish." The word hit me like a slap. "I'm selfish for wanting to spend time with my family." Michael stepped in then with that fake smile he uses when he wants to convince me of something. "Hope you have to understand, Emily and Jessica have been friends since high school. She's like a sister to her, and you, well, you've always been so understanding. We know you'll understand. Besides," Emily added, "it's really better this way. You're not used to traveling so much. The airport, the hotels, the different food, it's all just going to stress you out. It's better for you to stay home nice and quiet and take care of your plants." There it was again, the infantilization, treating me like I'm a little old lady incapable of handling the complexities of the modern world, as if my 68 years had automatically turned me into a mental invalid who needed to be protected from the complications of life. Sarah walked up then, holding my ticket, already exchanged for Jessica's, in her hands. "Thanks for understanding, Grandma. I really appreciate you making this trip possible for Jessica. She really needs it." That was the moment something inside me shattered completely. Not because they had swapped my ticket for someone else's. Not because they had decided to exclude me from the trip that I myself had paid for. It shattered because they hadn't even asked me. They had made the decision for me. They had talked among themselves. They had rearranged my life without consulting me, as if I were an object that could be moved from one place to another according to their convenience. "Hope," Emily said, using my full name like when I was a child and had done something wrong. "Don't make that face. We'll do something special when we get back, I promise." Another empty promise. Just like all the ones she had made in recent years, dinners that were canceled, visits that were postponed, calls that never came. Her word had lost all value to me, but apparently she hadn't realized that. The loudspeaker announced the first call for the flight. My flight. The flight I had been looking forward to for weeks. The trip that had filled my thoughts with hope and joy. Emily took Sarah's arm. "Come on, we need to check in." She turned to me one last time. "Hope, take a cab home. And remember to water the plants on the balcony, please." I just stood there holding my suitcase like an idiot, watching them walk away toward the boarding area. Emily didn't look back even once. Michael walked with that arrogance so many people admired, arm in arm with Sarah, chatting animatedly as if nothing had happened. As if they hadn't just shattered the heart of a 68-year-old woman in the middle of an airport full of strangers. But I was still frozen there, unable to move, unable to process what had just happened. People passed by me, dragging their suitcases, hugging their loved ones, living their normal lives while mine fell to pieces. A tear rolled down my cheek, then another and another. I couldn't control them. 40 years of marriage had taught me not to cry in public, to maintain my composure, to be the perfect wife, the perfect mother, the woman who never caused problems. But there I was, crying like a lost child in the middle of the city's largest airport. And in that moment of absolute pain, something began to change inside me. A small flame of something that had been dormant for years began to ignite. It wasn't anger yet, it wasn't revenge, it was something deeper and more dangerous. It was understanding. The understanding that I had spent my entire life making myself small so that others could feel big, that I had taught my own family not to value me by not valuing myself, that I had been complicit in my own invisibility by accepting every humiliation, every slight, every moment they treated me as less than nothing, all without protest. But that day in that airport, surrounded by strangers looking at me with pity, something changed forever in Hope Miller. And what they didn't know was that they had just awakened a woman who had been asleep for far too long. I returned home alone that day, and the silence of my small living room had never felt so deafening. I sat on the old armchair that belonged to my late husband David, and I let the tears flow for the first time in years. I wasn't crying because of the humiliation at the airport. I was crying for all the times I had swallowed my pain in silence. I remembered when Emily was 7 and got pneumonia. I spent nights awake by her bed, putting cold compresses on her feverish forehead, praying that my little girl wouldn't leave me. I remembered how I worked 3 jobs when David lost his just so Emily could stay in the private school she loved so much. I sold my jewelry, my nice dresses, everything of value to pay for her business degree. And when she married Michael, I was the one who gave them the $25,000 for the down payment on their condo, money that was meant for my own quiet retirement. But I handed it over without blinking because I wanted to see my daughter happy and established. Through all those years, I never complained. I never threw my sacrifices in her face. I thought that's what a mother's love was. Giving without expecting anything in return, sacrificing in silence, making your children's dreams come true, even if it meant giving up your own. My sister Susan always told me I was too generous, that Emily was getting used to me solving all her problems without her lifting a finger. Hope, she would say, that girl needs to learn that everything in life has a cost. If you give her everything on a silver platter, she'll never value anything. But I didn't listen. I thought Susan was just jealous because her son Kevin had turned out so irresponsible, always borrowing money and never paying it back. I felt proud that Emily was so successful, so elegant, so different from me. Now I realize Susan was right. By giving Emily everything without asking for anything in return, I had turned her into a person who believed she deserved everything while giving nothing. I had taught her that my love was unconditional and free, and because of that, she saw it as worthless. When something costs nothing, it's worth nothing, and my mother's love, which had been the greatest treasure of my life, was worth nothing to her. The days following the airport incident were torture. Emily called several times from Miami, but not to apologize. She called to tell me what a great time they were having, how beautiful the hotel was, how delicious the buffet was. "Mom, you should see this sunset. It's incredible. Jessica is doing so much better. She says this trip was exactly what she needed." Not once did she mention that I should have been there. Not once did she acknowledge that she had hurt me. It was as if she had completely erased from her mind the fact that I had paid for that vacation, that the trip was my gift to the family, that I should have been there enjoying it with them. Michael also called once, but his call was worse. "Hope, I just wanted to say you made the right decision. Emily is so relaxed, Sarah is having a great time, and honestly, I think it would have been really hard on you. The hotel has a lot of stairs, you have to walk a lot on the sand, the sun is very strong. It's definitely better that you stayed home." He spoke as if I had voluntarily decided to stay, as if the change of plans had been my idea, as if I were so stupid that I didn't realize what had really happened. Sarah sent a few photos through text, photos of her on the beach and the pool at elegant restaurants. In every photo, she was smiling, having fun without the slightest concern for her grandmother, who had been left home alone. At first, I thought maybe she would send me a message saying she missed me, that she wished I was there, but no message like that ever came. For her, just like for her parents, my absence made no difference. On the 3rd day of their trip, my neighbor, Mrs. Linda, came to visit me. Linda is 72 and was widowed 3 years ago, so she knows the loneliness of older women well. She brought me hot coffee and a pastry from the bakery on the corner. We sat in my small kitchen, and without me saying a word, she already knew what had happened. "Hope," she said with that wisdom that comes with age. "I saw you when you came back from the airport the other day. You had a look on your face that just broke my heart. And then I saw Emily and Michael drive off laughing like nothing had happened." Linda has that ability that some older women have to see things exactly as they are without sugarcoating or justifications. Let me ask you something, dear. When was the last time Emily did something for you without you having to ask? The question hit me like a bucket of cold water because I didn't have an answer. I tried to remember a single time in recent years when Emily had shown a spontaneous gesture of affection. A gift for no special reason. A call just to see how I was. A visit when she didn't need something from me. But I found nothing. Absolutely nothing. You can't remember even one, can you? Linda continued. Because to Emily, you're like tap water. You're always there when she needs you, you never run out, and it never occurs to her to wonder where you come from, or what happens if one day you're just gone. Her words hurt because they were true. I had become something so common, so reliable, so taken for granted that they didn't even notice my presence anymore. They only noticed my absence when they needed something. Linda then told me about her own experience with her son Chris. I was just like you, Hope. I gave him everything, spoiled him, never told him no. I thought that was being a good mother. Until one day I realized I had raised a man who thought the world owed him everything, and he owed no one anything. I had to learn to say no, to set boundaries, to make him respect me. It was the hardest thing I've ever done, but it was also the most necessary. That night alone in my house, I started to remember all the moments in recent years when I had felt something was wrong, but had chosen to ignore the feeling. Like when Emily asked me to watch Sarah during their second honeymoon, but then went on another vacation without telling me. Like when Michael asked to borrow $500 for an emergency and never paid me back. And when I asked about it, he said he thought it was a gift. Like when Emily asked me to deep clean her entire house because Michael's parents were coming for dinner, but then didn't invite me to the dinner because it was too formal and I wouldn't feel comfortable. All those moments that I had justified in my mind as misunderstandings, as normal family situations, I now saw them for what they really were. A systematic pattern of taking advantage of me. Emily had learned that she could ask me for anything and I would say yes. She had learned she could treat me badly and I would forgive. She had learned my love was unconditional and had decided to exploit that unconditionality. Mrs. Helen, who lives in the apartment below, came up to visit me on the fourth day. Helen is 75 and is one of those women who says things without a filter, not caring if it hurts or not. Hope, she said as soon as she sat in my living room, I heard the whole commotion the other day when you came back from the airport. And let me tell you, it's about time you realized how that daughter of yours treats you. Helen had been a silent witness to many situations I thought no one else had noticed. She told me she had seen Emily on the sidewalk talking on her phone, telling a friend that she was just waiting for me to die so she could sell my apartment and use the money to expand hers. Her exact words were, as soon as my mom dies, I'm selling her condo. With that cash, we can do the addition we want. It's in a great area, it must be worth at least $300,000. Those words chilled me to the bone. But at the same time, they lit a fire inside me that I thought had died long ago. My own daughter was waiting for my death like someone waits for an inheritance. She didn't care about losing me as a person, as a mother, as her daughter's grandmother. What she cared about was the money she could get from my death. And the worst part was, she had said it so casually, as if wishing for her mother's death for financial gain was the most normal thing in the world. Helen also told me she had seen Michael checking my mailbox on several occasions, apparently looking for documents related to my apartment or my finances. That man is after something, Hope. It's not normal for a son-in-law to be so interested in his mother-in-law's papers. Be very careful what you sign and what information you give them about your assets. That revelation made me remember something that had happened a few months ago, which I hadn't thought much of at the time. Michael had come to visit me with a folder full of papers, telling me it was to organize my finances and make sure everything was in order for the future. He had asked me to sign several documents that he said were just to make things easier, in case something happened to me. I had signed without reading, trusting that he as a lawyer knew what he was doing and had my best interests at heart. Now I realized I had probably signed documents that hurt me, that perhaps gave Emily or Michael some kind of control over my properties or my bank accounts. The realization that I had been so naive, so trusting, filled me with a rage I hadn't felt in years. They hadn't just betrayed me emotionally, they had likely betrayed me legally too. On the 5th day after the airport, when Emily and Michael returned from Miami, I expected them to come visit, to bring me a souvenir to tell me about their trip, to at least pretend they had missed me. But they didn't come. Not that day, not the next, not the day after. It was as if they had decided that after what happened at the airport, they no longer had to maintain even the appearance of family affection. It was Emily who finally called me, but not to apologize or invite me to dinner. She called because she needed me to watch Sarah for the weekend, because she and Michael were going to a wedding in Las Vegas. "Mom, can you stay with Sarah on Saturday and Sunday? You know we don't like leaving her alone and we don't trust the neighbors." The request outraged me so much that for a moment I couldn't speak. After humiliating me at the airport, after excluding me from the trip I had paid for, after going on vacation without even apologizing, she had the audacity to ask me to babysit her daughter as if nothing had happened, as if I were a servant who was always available no matter how they treated me. "Emily," I said with a calm I didn't even know I possessed, "I think you should find another option for watching Sarah." There was a silence on the other end of the line. Emily clearly did not expect that answer. "What do you mean another option, Mom? You're her grandmother. It's your responsibility to watch her when we can't." "My responsibility," I repeated, tasting the word. "And what is your responsibility to me, Emily?" "What are you talking about? I've always been a good daughter." "Really, a good daughter trades me for her friend on a trip I paid for. A good daughter humbles me in public and then acts like nothing happened. A good daughter goes on vacation without apologizing and then comes back asking for favors like it's the most normal thing in the world." Emily was quiet for a few seconds, but then her response showed me exactly what kind of person my daughter had become. "Mom, don't be so dramatic. The airport thing is over. Jessica needed that trip more than you did. She was in a crisis. You just wanted a vacation. I thought you would be more mature and understand that sometimes you have to make sacrifices for others." Sacrifices for others? As if I hadn't been making sacrifices my entire life. As if I hadn't worked 3 jobs to pay for her college. As if I hadn't sold my jewelry to give her the down payment on her house. As if I hadn't spent the last few years being her free babysitter, her unpaid housekeeper, her personal bank that never charged interest. "Emily," I said, "get a babysitter for Sarah. I have plans this weekend." "What plans could you possibly have? You never go anywhere." That question hurt more than any direct insult. She was right. I had no plans. I had no social life. I had no activities of my own. For years, I had organized my entire existence around their needs, their schedules, their convenience. I had become a woman with no life of her own, no identity outside of being the convenient mother who was always available. "Well, now I'm going to start going out," I replied. "And I'm starting this weekend." I hung up the phone before she could answer. It was the first time in my life I had ever hung up on Emily. The first time I had said no to something she asked. The first time I had put my own needs before hers. And it felt terrifying and liberating at the same time. That night I called my cousin Rose, who lives in Lake Geneva, and who had been inviting me to visit for years. "Rose," I said, "is that offer to come see your new house still open?" Rose was so excited she started making plans immediately. "Hope come this weekend. It's been so long. We can go to the craft markets, see the historic downtown talk like we used to when we were young." On Friday morning, I packed a small bag and took a bus to Lake Geneva. It was the first time in years I had done something just for me. Without asking anyone's permission, without checking Emily's schedule, without worrying if someone needed me. The bus ride gave me time to think, to reflect on all the changes that were happening in my mind and in my heart. During the entire weekend with Rose, I didn't receive a single call from Emily. Not to apologize, not to ask how I was, not to tell me how she solved the problem of watching Sarah. It was as if she had decided that if I wasn't going to be the convenient grandmother I'd always been, she would just ignore my existence. Rose and I spent 2 wonderful days remembering our youth, visiting beautiful places, shopping at the markets. For the first time in years, I felt like a whole person, not just an extension of someone else. Rose told me something that stuck with me forever. "Hope you are 68 years old, not 168. You still have so many years left to live. Are you going to spend them waiting for scraps of affection from people who don't value you? Or are you going to start living for yourself? When I returned to Chicago on Sunday night, I found 5 messages from Emily on my answering machine. They were not apologies. They were accusations. Mom, I can't believe you ditched me with Sarah. I had to cancel the wedding because I couldn't find a sitter. Roberto is furious with me. Mom, answer the phone. We need to talk seriously about your attitude. Mom, I don't know what's wrong with you, but this rebellion doesn't suit you at your age. Rebellion. As if demanding a minimum of respect was rebellion. As if refusing to be treated like a doormat was improper for my age. Emily had shown her true colors. When I didn't function as the problem-solving machine, she expected I was just a rebellious old woman who was misbehaving. That night, sitting in my living room with a cup of chamomile tea, I made the most important decision of my life. I was no longer going to live for Emily. I was no longer going to organize my existence around her needs. I was no longer going to accept scraps of affection as if they were a feast. I was 68 years old, but I was healthy, I had savings, and I had maybe 10 or 15 more years of life ahead of me, and I was going to live those years for myself. The next day, I called the law firm where David had worked before he retired. I made an appointment with Mr. Arthur Miller, a trusted man who knew my situation well. It was time to review all those papers I had signed without reading. It was time to protect my interests. It was time to take control of my own life. And as I dialed the phone number, I felt something I hadn't felt in years. Hope. Not the hope that Emily would change and go back to being the loving daughter I remembered. That hope had died at the airport. It was a new hope, a different, more powerful one. The hope of discovering who Hope Miller was when she wasn't being Emily's mother, Sarah's grandmother, or Michael's tolerated mother-in-law. The hope of meeting the woman I had buried under decades of sacrifice, and that woman I sensed with surprise and excitement had a lot to give, but not to just anyone, only to those who deserved it. The following Monday, I woke up different. It wasn't a dramatic awakening. There was no inspiring music or divine epiphany. It was simply a calm, cold certainty that settled in my chest. I got up. I made my coffee, as always, said my morning prayer, thanking God for the clarity He had given me. And then I called Mr. Arthur Miller, a trusted gentleman who had been a friend of my late husband, David. I scheduled an appointment for that same afternoon. While I drank my coffee, I made a mental list of everything I had given Emily over the years. The condo I lived in was in my name. It was a valuable property in the Lincoln Park area, easily worth $300,000. I had $80,000 in savings that I had religiously put away for decades. I had stocks David had left now worth about $50,000, and I had contributed the $25,000 down payment for the condo where Emily lived, which I gave her as a gift when she got married. In addition to the $300 a month, I still helped her pay from my pension. But there was something more important than money. For years I had been Sarah's free caregiver, Emily's unpaid housekeeper, the convenient grandmother who was always available. I had organized my entire life around their schedules, their needs, their convenience, and all of that was about to change. At Mr. Miller's office, I explained everything that had happened. He listened to me in silence, nodding his head with that expression of someone who has seen many sad stories of family and gratitude. Then he opened a folder and said, "Hope, let's put your life in order." The first thing we did was review all the documents I had signed when Michael came over with his papers. As I had suspected, some of those documents were not what he had told me. I had signed a power of attorney that gave Emily control over some of my bank accounts in case of incapacity. I had signed an authorization allowing Michael to advise me on the sale of properties. I had even signed a declaration supposedly expressing my wish for Emily to inherit my condo before my death to avoid bureaucratic procedures. "These documents are legal," Mr. Miller explained, "but they were obtained through deception. You didn't really know what you were signing. We can revoke all of them and create new documents that truly protect your interests." I felt so naive, so foolish for having trusted Michael blindly, but I also felt relief knowing I could still protect myself. First, we revoked all the powers of attorney and authorizations I had given. Second, I opened a new bank account at a different bank and transferred all my savings there. Third, I canceled the automatic monthly transfers I made to help with Emily's condo. Fourth, and most importantly, I changed my will. Instead of leaving everything to Emily, I decided to donate half of my assets to a nursing home called the Hope Residence, and the other half to a foundation that helped elderly women who were victims of family abuse. Mr. Miller asked if I was sure if I didn't want to think about it longer. I told him I had never been more sure of anything in my life. My daughter has already shown that she is only interested in my money, I told him, so she can learn that this money will go to people who truly need it and will value it. Over the next 2 weeks, I began a silent transformation. I didn't make any big announcements. I didn't have any dramatic confrontations with Emily. I simply began to live differently. I stopped answering all her calls immediately. I stopped being available every time she needed me for something. I stopped organizing my life around her schedules. The first time Emily realized something had changed was when she called me on a Tuesday afternoon to ask me to come clean her house because they were having an important dinner party on Friday. "Mom, can you come over on Thursday to do a deep clean? Michael's partners are coming and I need everything to be perfect." "I can't, Emily," I replied casually. "I have other plans." There was a silence on the other end. Emily clearly did not expect that answer. "What plans, Mom? This is important." "My plans are important to me too. What plans could you possibly have that are more important than helping your family?" That question showed me exactly how Emily saw me. To her, I couldn't have anything important in my life that didn't revolve around her needs. I couldn't have my own priorities, my own interests, my own life. I only existed to serve her. "Emily, hire a cleaning service. You have money for that." And I hung up the phone. The truth was, I did have plans. I had started taking watercolor painting classes at the local community center. I had started going to a book club at the library. I had made friends with other women my age who, like me, were rediscovering who they were outside of their roles as mothers and wives. For the first time in decades, I had a social life that didn't depend on Emily. On Thursday of that week, while I was in my painting class, I received 5 missed calls from Emily. When I finished class and checked my messages, they were all complaints. "Mom, I can't believe you won't help me when I need you most." "Mom, I had to hire a cleaning lady and it cost me $200. That's money we hadn't budgeted for." "Mom, Michael is very upset. He says you don't understand the importance of maintaining good relationships with his partners." I didn't answer any of the messages. Instead, I went to dinner with Linda and Helen at a small but cozy restaurant in Wicker Park. We spent 3 hours talking, laughing, telling stories from when we were young. I realized it had been years since I had laughed so much, since I had felt so alive, so present in my own life. Linda told me she had also gone through something similar with her son Chris. "He got really angry at first when I started telling him no," she said. "He was used to me being his official problem solver, but when he realized I wasn't going to give in to all his whims anymore, he started to value me differently. Now we have a more balanced relationship, more equal." Helen, who is always more direct, told me, "Hope what you're doing is perfect. That daughter of yours needs to learn that mothers are not free housekeepers. If she wants someone to clean her house, she can pay for that service like any normal person." The second test came the following week. Emily called to ask me to watch Sarah for a long weekend because she and Michael were going to Puerto Rico with some friends. "Mom, we've already booked the hotel and everything. We just need you to stay with Sarah from Friday to Monday." "I can't," I replied. "I'll be busy that weekend." Busy with what? Her tone was one of disbelief, as if it were impossible for me to have anything important to do. "I'm going to Boston with my book club. We're going to visit the historic bookstores and attend a book launch." "Mom, you can't be serious. You're going to put a little old ladies trip before taking care of your granddaughter." The way she said little old ladies trip hurt, but it also gave me clarity about what Emily really thought of my life, my interests, my new activities. To her, anything I did outside of serving her family was irrelevant, childish, a waste of time. "Emily," I said with a calm that surprised even me. "Sarah is 16 years old. She can stay alone for a weekend, or you can ask one of her friends to stay with her, or you can hire a sitter. You have several options that don't involve me canceling my plans." "I can't believe how selfish you've become, Mom." There was that word again, selfish. I was selfish for wanting to spend time with my family when it was convenient for me. I was selfish for refusing to clean her house for free. I was selfish for having my own plans that didn't revolve around her needs. Anything that wasn't complete availability to serve her was selfishness. Emily, I said, for 42 years I have put your needs before mine. I have sacrificed my time, my money, my interests for you. If I now want to reserve one weekend for myself, that is not selfishness. That is balance. But we're family, Mom. Family comes first. Exactly. And I am family too. I also deserve respect, consideration, and for my needs to be taken into account. I hung up the phone before she could respond. This time I didn't feel bad about it. I felt free. The trip to Boston was wonderful. It was a group of 8 women between 50 and 70 years old, all of them intelligent, cultured, interesting. We visited old bookstores, attended a poetry reading, ate at classic restaurants, and walked through the colonial streets. I realized there was a whole world of experiences, of pleasures of knowledge that I had been denying myself for years, just to be always available for Emily. One of the women in the group, Mrs. Margaret, told me her own story. I was also the selfless mother who sacrificed for everyone, she told me as we walked through the Boston Common. Until I realized that my children had learned not to value me precisely because I didn't value myself. When I started to respect myself, they also started to respect me. During the entire weekend in Boston, I didn't receive a single call from Emily. I didn't know if she had solved the problem of watching Sarah or if she had canceled her trip, and I realized I didn't care. For the first time in years, I wasn't worried about solving my daughter's problems. Her problems were her problems, and she was adult enough to solve them. When I returned to Chicago on Monday afternoon, I had 8 messages on my answering machine. The first 5 were from Emily, each one angrier than the last. Mom, I can't believe you ditched me again. Mom, I had to cancel the trip because Sarah refused to stay with any sitter. Mom, Michael is furious. We lost the money for the hotel because we couldn't cancel on such short notice. Mom, this is getting out of control. We need to talk. Seriously. Mom, I don't know what's wrong with you, but your attitude is affecting the whole family. The last 3 messages were from Michael, and his tone was very different. It was threatening. Hope this little rebellion of yours has gone too far. Emily is very distressed by your behavior. If you continue like this, we will have to consider other options. Hope, as your lawyer, I advise you to reconsider your attitude. The family is sacred, and you are destroying our family unit with your whims. Hope, if you can't behave like a responsible grandmother, maybe you need professional help. There are places that can help seniors who are having behavioral problems. That last message filled me with a cold rage. Michael was threatening me, suggesting that I was crazy, that I needed to be put somewhere, because I refused to be the enslaved grandmother they wanted. It was the final confirmation that they had never seen me as a person with my own rights, but as a piece of their property that had broken down and needed to be fixed. That night I called Mr. Miller and told him about Michael's threatening messages. Hope, he said, it is crucial that you document all of this. Record the conversations, save the messages. If Michael tries anything legal against you based on supposed mental problems, we need evidence that he is threatening and manipulating you. Over the next few weeks, the pressure from Emily and Michael intensified. They would come to my house unannounced, trying to talk to me about my attitude problem. Emily would cry, telling me she didn't recognize her mother anymore, that I had become a cold and cruel person. Michael would speak to me in that condescending tone he used when he wanted to manipulate me, explaining that older people sometimes develop personality issues, and that he could help me find adequate treatment. But I was no longer the same woman who could be manipulated with fake tears and veiled threats. I had found my strength, my dignity, my self-worth. Every time they came to pressure me, I simply told them to respect my decision to live my life as I wished, and if they couldn't do that, then they were not welcome in my house. The last straw came on a Tuesday afternoon. Emily and Michael arrived at my house with a folder full of papers and a man who introduced himself as a specialist in geriatric mental health. Apparently, they had arranged an appointment for this doctor to evaluate me and determine if I was mentally fit to make my own decisions. Mom, Emily said with tears in her eyes that no longer moved me. "We're worried about you. Your behavior has changed so much. You're not the same person." Dr. Fernandez smiled at me with that patronizing smile I had learned to detect and despise. "Mrs. Miller, your family is concerned because you've had some behavioral changes. I understand you've been making impulsive decisions, isolating yourself from your family, showing aggression toward your loved ones." I realized in that moment that Emily and Michael had been building a case to declare me mentally incompetent. They wanted this doctor to certify that I was not in my right mind, so they could nullify my decisions about my money, my property, my life. They wanted to take away my legal autonomy so they could control me completely. But they had made a crucial mistake. They had underestimated my intelligence and my preparation. "Dr. Fernandez," I said with a smile as fake as his, "it's a pleasure to meet you. But I must inform you that I already have a primary psychologist, a certified professional who has been evaluating my mental health for the past few weeks. His name is Dr. Ryan Harris, and his practice is downtown." It was true. After Michael's threats, Mr. Miller had recommended I get a full psychological evaluation from an independent professional to have official documentation that I was in full command of my faculties. Dr. Harris had done an exhaustive evaluation and had certified that I was completely sane, that my decisions were rational and well-founded. Furthermore, I continued pulling out a folder I had prepared specifically for this occasion. I have copies here of my complete psychological evaluation, certified and notarized, confirming that I am in full command of my mental faculties. I also have recordings of the threats my son-in-law has made to me over the past few weeks, including his attempts to have me declared incompetent so he can control my finances. Michael's face turned white. Emily's jaw dropped. Dr. Fernandez began to back toward the door, clearly uncomfortable with the situation. "If you want to continue with this charade," I continued, "my lawyer is prepared to file charges for coercion threats and attempted fraud against a senior citizen. We are also prepared to make public all the recordings where Michael threatens me and where you plan to declare me crazy to get my money." Michael tried to say something, but I raised my hand to silence him. "Now," I said, motioning toward the door, "I am going to ask you to leave my house, and I am going to ask you not to come back unless you come to sincerely apologize and acknowledge that you have treated me badly, because until that happens, you are not welcome here." They left in silence, defeated. Emily was crying, but they were no longer tears of manipulation. They were the tears of someone who realized they had forever lost the convenient mother who gave everything and asked for nothing. That night, sitting in my living room with a cup of chamomile tea, I realized I had won the most important battle of my life. It wasn't a battle against Emily or Michael. It was a battle against the version of myself that had allowed me to be mistreated for years. And that battle, finally, I had won. The days following that confrontation were strangely quiet. Emily didn't call. Michael didn't show up with more threats. It was as if they had finally understood that the submissive, manipulable woman they had known for years no longer existed. In her place was a woman who knew her rights, who had the resources to defend herself, and who was not going to let anyone walk all over her ever again. At first, I must admit, I felt a little lonely. For so many years I had organized my life around their calls, their visits, their needs, that when all of that disappeared, I was left with a strange feeling of emptiness. But it was a different kind of emptiness than I had felt before. It wasn't the emptiness of being ignored or belittled. It was simply the space that was now free, to be filled with new, better, more rewarding things. I began to fill that space with activities I truly enjoyed. My watercolor painting classes progressed so much that the teacher suggested I participate in a group exhibition at the Cultural Center. It was the first time in my life that someone had recognized a talent of mine, something I had created with my own hands, my own imagination, my own sensibility. The book club became more than a weekly activity. It became a chosen family, a group of intelligent, mature women who had found in books and friendship a new way to live this stage of their lives. We read novels by female authors, analyzed poems, discussed essays on feminism and aging. For the first time in decades, my mind was active, stimulated, growing. I also began to travel. Small trips at first. A weekend in Santa Fe with Linda. A week in Charleston with the book club. 3 days in New Orleans visiting a distant cousin I had reconnected with on Facebook. Each trip was a small adventure proof that I could be independent, that I could take care of myself, that I didn't need anyone's approval or company to enjoy life. It was during one of these trips to Savannah with 2 friends from my painting group that I received an unexpected call. It was Sarah, my granddaughter. Her voice sounded different, more mature, less haughty than the last time we had spoken. "Grandma," she said, and in that one word I could hear something I hadn't heard in years, genuine affection. "Can we talk?" "Of course, my love. Where are you?" "I'm at college." "Grandma, I know you and my parents are fighting, and I know you probably have reasons to be angry, but I didn't know. I didn't understand." Sarah told me she had overheard a conversation between Emily and Michael where they were talking about me in a way that had made her feel very uncomfortable. Michael had said it was a shame his plan to declare me incompetent hadn't worked, that now it would be harder to regain control of my money. Emily had replied that maybe they just had to wait for me to die, and that in the meantime they should pretend to reconcile with me so I wouldn't change my will any further. "Grandma," Sarah said, her voice breaking, "when I heard them talk about you like that, like you were just an obstacle to getting money, I realized how horrible we've been to you, and I realized that I was horrible too. I always treated you like you were just a boring old lady who didn't understand anything, but the truth is I was the one who didn't understand anything. For the first time in months, I felt that someone in my family truly saw me as a person, not as a bank or a housekeeper or a burden." Sarah had grown up. At 16, she had learned something that her parents in their 40s still didn't understand, that older people deserve respect and sincere love, not condescending tolerance. "Grandma, I know you probably don't want to hear from us ever again, and I would completely understand if you hung up the phone, but I wanted you to know that there is someone in this family who realizes how valuable you are, all that you sacrificed for us, and how badly we've repaid you." Tears began to roll down my cheeks, but they were different tears than the ones I had cried in recent months. They weren't tears of pain or rage. They were tears of relief, of gratitude, of hope. I hadn't lost my family completely. At least one person had learned the lesson. "Sarah," I said, "I could never hang up on you. You will always be my beloved granddaughter no matter what happens with your parents. Can I come visit you when you get back? I want to apologize in person. And I want you to tell me about your trips, your classes, everything you're doing. A friend of mine saw your paintings at the Cultural Center exhibit and told me they were beautiful." "I didn't know you painted." There was the problem in one sentence. My own granddaughter didn't know I painted, because for years no one had bothered to ask me what I liked to do, what interested me, what I dreamed of. To them, I had no inner life, no talents, no aspirations. I only existed to serve them. When I returned from Savannah, Sarah came to visit me. She was a different young woman from the spoiled teenager I remembered. She looked more mature, more thoughtful. She brought me flowers, something she had never done before, and a handwritten letter asking for my forgiveness for all the years of mistreatment and disrespect. "Grandma," she said, sitting in my living room and looking at my paintings on the walls, "I want you to know that since I started college, I've realized a lot of things. I have friends who adore their grandmothers, who learn things from them, who respect them and ask for their advice. And I realized that I missed the chance to really know you because I was too busy being a spoiled, ungrateful brat." We spent 3 hours talking. Sarah told me about her psychology studies, about her plans to specialize in geriatric care. "I think my calling came from realizing how badly we treat people like you," she said. "I want to dedicate my professional life to making sure other seniors don't go through what you went through with us." She also told me she had confronted her parents about what she overheard. I told them I was ashamed to be their daughter, that they had turned their own mother into their enemy out of pure greed. I told them that if they kept treating you badly, I didn't want anything to do with them. I was surprised by Sarah's maturity, but it also pained me to know she was in the middle of a family conflict because of me. "My love," I said, "I don't want you to fight with your parents because of me." "Grandma, it's not because of you. It's because of what's right and what's wrong. My parents are wrong, and someone had to tell them." 2 weeks after that visit from Sarah, I received another unexpected call. It was Emily. But her tone was completely different from our last conversations. There was no arrogance, no manipulation, no threats. There was something I hadn't heard in her voice in years: humility. "Mom," she said, "can we meet? I need to talk to you." I agreed to meet her at a neutral cafe, not at my house or hers. I wanted it to be in a public place on neutral territory where neither of us had the emotional advantage. Emily arrived on time, which surprised me because she had always been late for our meetings. She looked tired older, as if the last few months had been hard on her too. She sat across from me, and for a long moment neither of us said anything. "Mom," she finally began, "I came to ask for your forgiveness." Those were not the words I expected to hear, but I didn't get emotional immediately. I had learned to distrust easy words, empty promises, and apologies that only last until they need something from me again. "Sarah opened my eyes to a lot of things," Emily continued. "She made me see what Michael and I were planning to do to you, what we had already been doing to you for years. She made me see that we turned you into our free housekeeper, our personal bank, our convenient babysitter." Emily told me she had been going to therapy for a month, trying to understand why she had been so cruel to the person who had loved her most in the world. "My therapist told me something that hurt a lot, but it was true," she said. "She said that I had learned not to value you, because you taught me that your love was free and unconditional no matter how we treated you." It was a painful but true revelation. By not setting boundaries, by not demanding respect, by accepting any treatment just to maintain the relationship, I had been complicit in my own mistreatment. I had taught my daughter that she could walk all over me without consequences. "Mom," Emily continued, "I also want you to know that I left Michael." That news surprised me completely. Why? Because when I saw how he treated you, when I realized the horrible things he had said to you, I understood that a man who can be so cruel to an older woman can be cruel to anyone, and I realized I didn't want to be married to someone like that anymore. Emily explained that Michael had shown his true colors during the last few months. When he realized he wouldn't be able to control my money, he had started pressuring her to get my forgiveness by any means necessary. He had suggested they fake a reconciliation to win back my trust, and then find a way to nullify my new will. "It was in that moment that I realized Michael never really loved me," Emily said. "He only loved the idea of having access to your money through me, and I realized I had become just like him." We sat in silence for several minutes. Emily was crying quietly, and this time I could see they were genuine tears of regret, not tears of manipulation. "Mom," she said finally, "I'm not here to ask you to forgive me immediately. I know you need time to trust me again, if you can ever trust me again. I'm just here to tell you that I understand why you did what you did, that I realize we forced you to defend yourself, and that I am willing to work to rebuild our relationship, but this time in a healthy, balanced way." I asked her what she planned to do with her life now that she had left Michael. She told me she had found a job at a company where her college degree was finally being used, that she was living in a smaller apartment that she could afford on her own, that she was learning to be independent for the first time in her life. "It's terrifying," she admitted, "but it's also liberating. For the first time in years, I don't have to ask anyone's permission to make decisions about my life." Those words resonated deeply with me, because they described exactly what I had felt when I decided to take control of my own life. When we said goodbye that afternoon, Emily asked if she could call me from time to time, with no hidden agenda, just to talk. I said yes, but that she needed to be patient, that rebuilding trust was going to take time. "Mom," she said before leaving, "I want you to know that I understand now why you left, and I'm proud of you for having the courage to do what you did." That night, as I watered my plants on the balcony and watched the city lights stretch to the horizon, I reflected on everything that had happened. I had lost the version of the family I had before, but I had gained something much more valuable: my dignity, my autonomy, my self-respect. I didn't know if Emily had truly changed, or if this was just a new, more sophisticated strategy. Time would tell. But what I did know was that it didn't matter as much anymore, because I had learned to be happy without depending on anyone else's approval or affection. I had found myself, and no one could take that away from me. 6 months have passed since that last meeting with Emily at the cafe, and my life has found a rhythm I never imagined possible. I wake up early every morning. I take a walk through Lincoln Park as the sun rises, painting the sky orange and pink, and I thank God for the courage He gave me to be reborn. My small apartment is full of plants that I care for lovingly. Each pot is like a green child that depends on me, but never charges me, never diminishes me, never makes me feel like a burden. I finished a certificate program in art history at the Senior University, and I discovered I have a real passion for American colonial art. My paintings of historic churches and traditional markets sell at the art fair in Old Town on Sundays, and the extra money allows me small luxuries I always denied myself. An art book, some fine chocolate, a beautiful shawl from Santa Fe that I bought just because it made me smile. The other day, while I was watering my geraniums on the balcony, my phone rang. It was Emily's number. I looked at the illuminated screen for a long few seconds, feeling my heart tighten slightly. But then, with a calmness that only comes from someone who has made peace with their decisions, I pressed the red button and declined the call. It wasn't out of anger. It wasn't for revenge. It was simply because I didn't need that anymore. I didn't need the late apologies, the promises of change, the attempts to bring me back to a place where I was never truly valued. A few weeks later, I received a letter from Sarah. She wrote 4 pages telling me how she was doing in college, how she had learned to value the simple things after her parents lost their previous standard of living, and how she finally understood what I had tried to teach. She said she loved me, that she missed my presence, but that she respected my decision, that I deserved to be happy. I put the letter in an old wooden box next to my wedding photos with David and the drawings Emily made when she was a child. I didn't respond. Some gestures are more powerful in silence. Yesterday, Linda came to visit me for the first time since my new life began. She took the bus from the Pilsen neighborhood just to spend the afternoon with me. And as we drank coffee on my balcony watching the sunset, she told me I was different, that my eyes had a light she hadn't seen in years, that my voice sounded firmer, that even my posture was straighter. I smiled and told her that's what happens when you finally decide to live for yourself. She hugged me tightly and cried a little in that way that true friends cry when they see someone they love finding peace. I told her I was planning a trip to the Grand Canyon next month, a place David always wanted to see, but we never had the money. Now I have it, and I'm going alone on my own time without worrying about bothering anyone or being a burden. Linda asked if I wasn't afraid traveling alone at my age. I told her the only thing I was afraid of was wasting the years I have left waiting for others to give me permission to live. This morning, as I painted a new watercolor of St. Michael's Church, I thought about everything I left behind. The big empty house that had become a prison, the family Sundays full of tension disguised as togetherness, the nights alone in my room listening to laughter in the living room I was excluded from. And I also thought about what I gained: freedom, dignity, self-respect, and the discovery that it is never too late to be reborn. Emily may never fully understand what she did to me at that airport and in the years that led up to that day. Maybe she'll spend the rest of her life thinking I overreacted, that I was dramatic, that I destroyed a family out of pride. But I know the truth. I didn't destroy anything. I simply stopped destroying myself so that others could feel whole. I closed the old box where I kept the need for her approval, and in its place, I planted seeds of self-love that are finally blooming. My book club has become my chosen family. These wise, experienced women have taught me that friendship and maturity can be deeper and more nourishing than many family relationships based on obligation and habit. We meet every Wednesday to discuss books, but really, we meet to celebrate our lives, our late achievements, our newfound freedoms. Helen. My neighbor told me recently that she saw Michael at the supermarket and that he looked older, bitter. Apparently, he's still looking for older women with money to manipulate. Predators like him never change, Helen told me. They just look for new victims. I was glad to know I am no longer one of them. Mr. Miller called me last week to confirm that all my legal documents are in order, that my will is protected, that my finances are secure. Hope, he said, you made the right decisions at the right time. Many women your age do not have the courage to defend themselves as you did. His words filled me with a deep satisfaction. I had fought for my dignity, and I had won. Last night, while organizing my photographs to make an album of my new life, I found an old picture of Emily when she was 5 years old. She was a beautiful, smiling, affectionate child. I wonder when she transformed into the cold, calculating woman I knew in my later years. Maybe the blame wasn't only hers. Maybe by giving her everything without asking for anything, by not teaching her the value of effort and gratitude, I contributed to creating the monster that devoured me for years. But those reflections no longer cause me pain. They are simply observations, lessons learned, wisdom gained through suffering and survival. I hold no grudge against Emily. I wish her happiness. I hope she learns to value what she has, to build relationships based on mutual respect. But I don't need to be present for her growth process, just as she was not present for mine. Sometimes I get indirect news through Sarah or acquaintances in the neighborhood. I know Emily is working, that she's learning to be independent, that her separation from Michael was final. I'm happy for her, but from a distance, like you're happy for an acquaintance who finally makes good decisions. This afternoon, I'm going to the opening of a group exhibition featuring several senior artists. One of my watercolors will be there alongside sculptures, photographs, and paintings by men and women who, like me, discovered their talents after 60. It is a celebration of the infinite possibilities that exist when we stop living for others and start living for ourselves. Tomorrow, I will start packing for my trip to the Grand Canyon. It will be my first major solo adventure, my first time traveling far without asking permission, without consulting anyone else's schedule, without worrying about being a bother. I will bring my watercolor sketchbook to paint the canyons, the sunsets, the ancient cliffs. I will bring books to read on the flights. I will bring my heart open to new experiences, new friendships, new versions of myself. And when I return, I will continue building this life that I created from scratch. This life where I am the protagonist, not the supporting actress. This life where my needs matter just as much as anyone else's. This life where love is based on mutual respect, not convenience or habit. Sometimes the greatest rebirth is the silence we choose to keep. We are curious to know how far this story reached. Where are you watching us from? Comment below.